What's going on, guys? Anime Yokage back at it again, and today we're going to be talking about Jujutsu Kaisen Chapter 257. So without further ado, let's get into it. So our chapter starts out in a flashback to whenever Urarame and Megumi Sukuna were talking on top of a rooftop, and they were talking about the similarities that they feel between Sukuna and Yuji, and how Urarame felt that herself. This is where we get the disclosure, when Sukuna comes to the realization that Yuji is the soul of his twin brother. Now see, not surprisingly enough, Sukuna actually ate his twin brother in the womb because he said that he needed to save himself from starvation. But whenever he did that, Sukuna's twin brother's soul aimlessly bounced around and around until somehow it ended up in Kenjaku's hands. And this is why Yuji's dad looks so much like Sukuna, or looks so much like, Yuji, Sukuna. They all have a lot of similarities. And that's possibly where his grandfather's lineage comes from as well. Sukuna comes to the conclusion that they have the same soul, so this must be what happened. And of course, this is what us in the community have been thinking about for a very long time, that this was a possibility, but it is so validating to be backed up canonically in the manga by it. As the original vessel of Sukuna, Yuji was bred to be this powerful and have this much potential, and that's where Urarame comes up with the fact that Yuji Itadori must have the same latent potential as Sukuna. We've all seen what an absolute monster Sukuna is, and we've all prayed for the moment that Yuji would have his up-and-comings. Yuji, for too long, has suffered the fate of being an MC with no power. He has suffered that fate for far too long, and we're finally get to see our boy come up and actually pose a threat to the King of Curses. Sure, he can punchy harder than a lot of other people, but so many other individuals have specific and detailed powers in order to fight against Sukuna with and actually pose a threat, where all the way up to this point, Yuji could just punch him pretty hard. And in a battle of punches, I don't know if Yuji could beat Sukuna in this state. This isn't canonical or anything, but I saw someone have a theory saying that they believe that Sukuna had heavenly restriction, and then once he ate his twin, he actually absorbed that curse technique that his twin had, which was Shrine. I think that's super cool if it actually happened, because that would explain why his body is so powerful and so strong and able to do all the things that it can. Most likely he's just amping himself up with cursed energy like a lot of these other sorcerers do, but how cool would that be? But it would be absolutely broken for Sukuna, and I don't want that. I don't want that. He's already winning too much. So let's go ahead and make sure that doesn't happen canonically. We come back to present time, and Yuji and Sukuna are facing off on hallway balcony thing, and they are getting ready to attack. If you remember, earlier in this fight between Sukuna and Yuji has already landed one Black Flash, so we'll go ahead and count those up as this chapter goes on. Yuji evades attack from Sukuna, brushing off his arm and striking him with his second Black Flash. And as we saw earlier when Sukuna ended his Black Flashes, it actually amps up the user who landed the Black Flash, and it debuffs whoever was on the receiving end. So whoever was striking with the Black Flash would get a surge in their cursed energy, would be put more in the zone, they would be more focused and become stronger on every single level, while the other person receiving would be diminished, would be debuffed. It's an incredible attack, but that's why you can't land it on purpose. That's why it's randomly chosen of whenever you will land a Black Flash. But whenever you land a Black Flash, it is more likely for you to land more Black Flashes because you are getting more tuned in the zone. As we'll see here, Yuji just keeps landing them. Without missing a beat, Yuji lands his third consecutive Black Flash on Sukuna. And these attacks aren't anything that's throwing Sukuna through a wall or anything like that, but they are whittling away at him and damaging him. We're not seeing him fly across the map or anything. It's hitting him, it's damaging him, and they're moving on with the fight. Sukuna knocks Yuji off the balcony where they were fighting earlier, and Yuji lands next to a giant pillar. You would think Yuji could kick this giant pillar, maybe break it, and then throw it at Sukuna, but he goes another route, revealing his second curse technique that we've seen from him so far. And yes, it seems that he has stolen Sukuna's curse technique. He's stolen his technique, He's using it against him, but it looks like here that he's able to place his hand on whatever he wants to cut. And whenever he does that, it kind of gets more of a modern era touch. And he's able to put these perforated cut lines, like we'd have as a kid when we were cutting out construction paper and everything. And it shows where the cut will happen. That's most likely a prerequisite to the curse technique landing, is that whenever he places his hand and deems where he wants to be cut, those perforated lines have to show up before the cut is initiated. And we get some exposition from Sukuna himself of why this technique is showing itself now. Sukuna explains that there are 2 curse techniques residing within Yuji right now. The first one being blood manipulation, which he got from eating all the cursed womb death paintings, 4 through 9. And that's where he's able to get his blood manipulation. Now, the second one is being claimed to be awakened by all these black flashes landing consecutively and amping him up. It says that he's able to activate the technique that is engraved on his soul from Ryoma and Sukuna. And the technique is called Shrine. We finally got confirmation on what this technique is called, and I don't know, it's pretty cool. I mean, we've never known what it's actually called. We know it's Cleave and Dismantle, but that's just what he calls the 2 different attacks. We didn't know the actual cursed name of the technique. Now, I don't know if he's insinuating that this is happening just because of his awakened state. I'm sure that he's showing it now and much more easily because of his awakened state, but he's using this technique, it seems, a little too proficiently. To use a technique this proficiently, I understand that he has been bathed in Sukuna's cursed energy, and he would eventually develop his technique, as we were told by Gojo in Season 1. But it seems that he's using this technique a little too easily and a little too nonchalantly. That is telling me that he has been practicing with this technique ever since we had the time skip. So, moving on. Yuji grabs the pillar behind him that he's now disconnected with his new version of Shrine, and he throws it at Sukuna. Sukuna blocks with his foot, but whenever he blocks with his foot, Yuji punches straight through the portion of pillar and grabs onto Sukuna's leg. Okay, he's gonna slam Sukuna or something. Wrong. When he grabs Sukuna's leg, he actually makes the perforated cut marks appear on Sukuna's leg as if he's going to slash off Sukuna's leg. Before he can pull this off, though, Sukuna sends a couple dismantles his way in order to cut his face. We see that these cuts do not affect Yuji as they normally would. Let alone him getting stronger, him landing these black flashes are cutting down Sukuna's curse technique potency. So the more he lands, the more that these are going to be ineffective. And that's where we come to it. Yuji lands his 4th black flash. I believe it's his 4th. Correct me if I'm wrong. His 4th black flash in this fight. And again, I'm counting the first black flash that he landed a chapter ago. We get to jump into Sukuna's head of what he's thinking about it at this point. And yes, he's addressing that Yuji is using his curse technique. But he's saying that the era in which the sorcerer is being reflected on this technique is a disparity when it comes to its potency and power. And he's talking about the perforated marks and everything, and it's not as potent as whenever he uses it. But he says, who cares about that? What I'm really worried about are these black flashes that he's landing on me time and time again. And that's when we yet again cut away from this fight and go back to another flashback. And in this flashback, we're actually getting some exposition of whenever Ino approached Gojo and the gang. We were wondering for a long time what Ino was asking them, but we find out that Ino was asking for their permission to use Nanami's cursed tool. Which is understandable. These are some of Nanami's closest and oldest friends that he's kind of wanting to get their blessing and their permission with before he just goes ahead and takes the liberty of using Nanami's cursed tool. But each one of them is like, what are you talking about? Use it. You were his most trusted person. You were better friends than any one of us were. We were friends back in the day, but in current time, you were probably his most trusted person that he's ever had by his side. And it's cool to see that they trust him so much with it and how much of a connection that Ino and Nanami had. Moving back forward into present time, we start to see Ino make a move. Ino yet again dons his ski mask and he is able to summon the 4th auspicious beast, Ryu. Now we've seen little things of the other auspicious beasts, things that come from them, not the full auspicious beast itself, But Ino just summons a whole ass dragon right here. Given it's not anything like the dragon that Geto was summoning before with his curse manipulation technique, but this is still a whole ass dragon. Although this amazing moment doesn't last long, because as soon as Ryu lands his first attack, Sukuna completely dismantles him with his curse technique, cutting him into sashimi. But I'm pretty sure Ino was expecting that because he follows up immediately with Nanami's curse tool and tries to strike Sukuna. And of course, Ino was not planning to land a finishing blow or a devastating move of any kind. It was simply a distraction so Yuji could get the upper hand once again. And Yuji is handing out black flashes like he's Oprah. Everyone's getting a black flash, and by everyone, I mean Sukuna is getting all of them. And he lands his 5th black flash. And by this technique of chaining these black flashes one to another, Sukuna may be up here when it comes to being a sorcerer, and Yuji may be down here. But with each black flash, that distance gets a little bit different. He rises up a little bit, Sukuna comes down a little bit at a time. So if he can even the playing field, then it will be a fair fight and give them a chance to get the upper hand on Sukuna. Finally, chapter after chapter, we see that Sukuna maybe just puts against a wall, then he jumps out on top. He is able to kill whoever's coming at him or take them out of the fight. And as to time, it was getting really old. Finally, we may be seeing where that was building up to where Yuji can match him on the playing field and make this a much more fair fight. And Ino says something a little odd here. He says, "There goes Kirin too." And I believe Kirin can be also, I think it means dragon. Pretty sure it means dragon. I don't know if whenever one of his auspicious beasts gets destroyed, if they're gone forever, kind of like Megami's Shikigami. Are the auspicious beasts Shikigami? What are they? I don't even know what they really are. I don't know if they're manifestations of his curse technique coming to fruition, or these are truly 4 auspicious beasts that he is able to tame with his curse technique and use at his will. That would kind of make sense to there goes Kirin too. I don't know if they're gone forever. I really hope not, because that really sucks for Ino and sucks for us seeing any of their potential in the future. But if they are gone, it is what it is. Gege is not one to throw us a bone and give us a hopeful future. In the next panel, even though Sukuna is grinning, he is scared because he doesn't know how Yuji is landing all these black flashes, and he knows if he keeps doing it, it will only be a matter of time until the playing field is leveled and he won't be fully on top anymore. So as he puts his hand to the ground, he performs a dismantle or a cleave in order to take up the ground and destroy it. Yuji jumps above it in order to avoid the cuts and the slashes. And in that moment, Sukuna jumps up and tries to strike Yuji, which is not going to happen. Yuji is able to evade it and grab onto his arm. And Sukuna's freaking out. He's saying, how is he completely unfazed by all my strikes and slashes? I'm Sukuna. How is he doing this? Yuji punches Sukuna back into a wall and rears back once again. And he slams Sukuna with another black flash. That is his 6th black flash, if I'm correct. 6th black flash in this fight as a whole. And I'm talking a real black flash, not knocking him side to side a little bit. It is heavy enough to destroy the wall behind Sukuna and flail his arms up in the air. He is hurt from this and he is desperate. And in that desperation, he reaches up for Yuji's face and places his hand on it, which we know with that curse technique that Sukuna has, Cleave and Dismantle, or Shrine now as we know it. Whenever he actually places his hand on something to enact the curse technique, it becomes much, much stronger. Instead of having to send it through the air, if he has his hand on whatever he wants to cut, much like Yuji is doing with the perforated scissor marks around stuff, it becomes incredibly powerful. Now that I think about it, I don't know if Yuji were to use a flying version of the shrine technique that he has now, if he could just simply reach out and have the cut marks go across somebody before it cuts him. I know it wouldn't be as powerful if we're following the same rules as Sukuna has, that if he touches it, it becomes much more powerful rather than sending him through the air. But imagine if Yuji is able to spam some of those just to throw somebody off. He may not be able to cut through people, cut limbs off, or anything like that, but any unexpected damage would give anyone the upper hand in this fight. Sukuna lands his cleave on Yuji's face by placing his hand on it, and we see Yuji's face is all cut up and ripped up, but not enough to cut through Yuji's head or anything like that. Right now, Sukuna's landing paper cuts on him because he is so diminished. His technique is completely diminished from all the black flashes. And it's really cool to see Yuji's face because Yuji's face actually has it all cut up and bloodied, and it looks like Sukuna's mask that he has on that side of his face. So it's showing the parallel between the two. But hold up, he's not done because Yuji pulls back with his other hand and lands yet another black flash. That is 7 black flashes currently in this fight. If it's 8, I'm sorry. I'm counting 7 right now. And just like the last black flash, he hits Sukuna so hard that we see Sukuna's body just flail back from the black flash. I swear I'm going to start stuttering if I say black flash anymore, but I have to. I have to because that's what's happening, and I have to give you guys the proper chapter review. After landing that attack, we see that Sukuna is getting very, very visually agitated, and he starts yelling at Yuji as he comes back from being hit. But whenever he comes back from being hit, he doesn't see Yuji in front of him because Yuji has already appeared behind Sukuna ready to land yet another attack. And Ino, being wore out and beat up from this fight, he says, you know what, for somebody on my level, I didn't do too bad. And he just sits up there and starts cheering on Yuji. It's not like he can't do much more. At this point, it's in Yuji's hands. And if Ino has lost all of his auspicious beasts, he can't be much more of a help in this fight unless he catches Sukuna off guard yet again with the curse tool from Nanami. I think I read somewhere that the curse tool from Nanami is called a doll, like D-A-H-L or D-A-L. I don't know. I won't call it that yet until I find out for sure, but I think that's what it's called. Until then, it's Nanami's curse tool. And we see Yuji's MC moment right here, his main character moment, as he appears behind Sukuna, and Sukuna is caught off guard because he doesn't even know Yuji's back there yet. Yuji is able to land his 8th black flash. 8th black flash. Right in Sukuna's back with an uppercut. This is incredible. I don't know if he can keep going with this, but in the text on the last page, it says, don't just rival the king, surpass him. And I think we're going to begin to see the ascension of Yuji Itadori as the rival of Sukuna. And he's going to make Sukuna pay for everything that he's put him and all of his friends through. All in all, this was an absolutely fantastic chapter. I love to see the shift finally, because for the longest time when I was reading these and watching it, I didn't see much of a way for good guys to come out on top. Every time that they have an upper hand, was not an upper hand. It didn't work. And now I'm actually starting to see the light through the darkness. We may have a winner on our hands, folks. I'm not trying to jinx it. Knock on wood. We're not going to do that. But what we are going to do is tune in next week to find out exactly how Yuji follows this up. So thank you all for tuning in today. I'm Anime Okage. See you next time.